Father's Day, right? Happy Father's Day, anybody who's a father. And give it to myself. I want to talk about this article. So it's kind of this article, this video is kind of like how to interpret things from these days. Like there's more and more women doing blogs, podcasts, writing articles that are pro men. You'll see this. And there's many ways to look at it, and I know there's a lot of different opinions, and I just kind of wanted to give my take on it, right? Some people, I'll just give you an idea of what I've read and heard. Some guys will say things like, she's trying, whenever there's a woman writing a positive article about men, there would be, cynical, I would call them cynical articles saying, she's trying to get a man, and that could be true. It is possible, right? Or it could be, some people will say, or even I think this sometimes, easy to get, for a woman, especially an attractive woman, to get a good following and make money by saying positive things about men, whether or not you believe it. And that is true. That is very true. And people are motivated by this type of stuff. So I don't discount those as a possibility. But at the same time, I think you got to pause a little bit and say, wait a second, what is the most likely given this situation? So, for example, in this particular article, right? So we have a pro-men article on Father's Day. Looking at her face, seems like kind person, hard to tell. Let's see. So Jenny Holland, author of Saving Culture Substack newsletter. So I didn't actually look at Saving Culture, but the fact that she's not like her whole, it doesn't look like to me her whole business is focused around this topic is a good sign. And in the world, there are definitely women who love their fathers. There's no doubt about it. And have had very bad experiences with their own sex. Just because of their family and circumstance, right? And that they love their fathers, and I've met women like that. But at the same time, too, that's another take, right? But I don't, even though that's probably true in this case, I would put my money on like this woman actually believes this. She's not trying to make a career out of it. She's saying, wait a second, this is totally lame. Like, men are being, debased and destroyed, and it's like men are the ones that keep society going, right? So then what you get also is you get kind of the bombard every few articles about how men built the world and all this. That also, I don't think, is the most productive argument. And why do I say that? I say it for a couple of reasons. One is that it just said, I think the first guy who said it was very useful. The first time I read it, I thought, wow, that's true. Like most inventions, like most of the infrastructure is run by men. But, also too, honestly, a lot of those jobs are high paying, and you don't need, college degrees, so that it's easy to get into, and it just matters about hard work. And a lot of guys, we kind of go, we gravitate towards that stuff because that's practical. You know what I mean? That's instead of wasting 4 years in school, if you can start making more money right away, it makes sense, right? But at the same time, that's not exactly the way many men kind of are making the argument. A lot of men are making the argument like, men are out there doing this to save society. Their only purpose, like the men are just slaving away like victims to keep this thing going, and they're not getting appreciated. Where I would say that that overall is partly true, no doubt about it. There's no question about it. Same with the military, but each individual, me included, you included, we do things for our own interests. Just like women, everybody does things based on what they think obviously is the right thing to do, but also the best thing for them. And for a lot of guys, that is a good job. It is a smart decision, right? It might not be the most prestigious, but it's a smart decision. So for a lot of guys, being a plumber, right? Great job. So electrician, great job. So, crane operator, great job. So what, soil engineer, right? Another good job, high paying. But we don't do that, like solely because it's good for society. Right? So that's also, I think, it's kind of a fake argument. And I think my biggest beef with that argument, although like I said, when I first read it, I loved it. But now that I hear people repeating, I'm like, wait a second, is this like 100% true? One thing I notice when I go back home to the U.S. Is that a lot of the manual labor jobs have become easy. And so you see guys that do manual labor that have huge guts, right? And they're just driving like a truck around or some kind of vehicle that's basically doing the work, right? Now, of course, it sucks to be out there and sweating their asses off, and it's dangerous, and there's no question. I'm not saying that there's no value, but I'm saying, like, if you compare the Western, let's say, labor jobs with labor jobs in India or in Thailand, when you see guys building roads here, they're doing it breaking their backs, kind of like our fathers and grandfathers did. But these days, men in Western societies do most of the quote unquote back-breaking jobs. But honestly, I just want to put this out there just because it's true. It doesn't help any arguments, but it's getting pretty easy to do a lot of these jobs. And that's the reason why you see more and more women going into construction, is because they're not having to break their backs. Like, you go to a construction site, it's very common, like in California, to see 3 or 4 guys standing around, right, not doing anything. One guy, like, in a truck, and pretty much guys just, like, laughing, like, especially city, street guys. I see that, like, all the time in California. And I'm thinking, like, these are the guys that are, like, building society? Dude, it's one of the dangers when you're making arguments and when you're kind of thinking about overall trends, is to put yourself into a group. And we do that all the time, right? Because we say we are men, right? Men is a word. Men do this, men do that. If you worked labor, I worked labor for like a year, or something like that, maybe a little more. It was a good experience. It was hard. Concrete labor is hard. It's one of the more harder, especially the type of jobs I was on. They weren't big jobs. They were like small jobs where you actually had to do stuff. You couldn't get a big machine to do something. It wasn't a city job, right? And they were definitely hard-working jobs, and that's what I wanted. That's why I went and got them. But I see other guys working, and I'm just like, dude, that guy, like, like if a guy's got a big gut, like a huge gut, like, and he's obese, like, yeah, he might be working hard, but I don't know, man. There's I don't know. It's getting less clear. Sadly, it's getting less clear. So how do you look at these articles? Like, how do you think of yourself, and how do you look at these articles, like, so that you can be honest with yourself and also kind of make good decisions and make good decisions about other people? Because if, for example, if this woman here is just trying to get my attention just for her own, gain, then it's questionable whether it's the smartest thing for me to do, right? And also, too, let's say she's a good person and she's awesome and loves her dad and she's totally sincere. At the same time, is she like an example of the average woman? Like, will this have any effect on my life? Like, should things like this change my viewpoint on life, right? And also, too, like, which is, I think, one of the big problems now, too, is once you realize that her articles, the title is correct, our society reviles men, and I think that part there is good, that they're writing about it in major magazines. Our society reviles the group in most, let's just take that part out. Our society reviles men. I think that's the way to read that title. It's like she's just saying the truth. Since when was the last time somebody admitted that society hates men? Like the different types that are in that group. Like the last I heard, we're all privileged and it's so easy for us, right? And here we have somebody saying the exact opposite. But the thing is, these two arguments, they go on at the same time. Okay, now I want to give you the analysis. Okay, so what should you do with this information? Not what should you not do, or which thinking, like which lines of thinking will just get you into being more angry or confused. Because some guys will read this and they'll be like, oh, things are changing. Awesome. You know, women are starting to wake up. It's in a big magazine. No, that's not what I'm saying. I think that it's just, you should hear society reviles you. That is Western society. That's the only thing. She says R, that means Western. Western society hates you. I think that is a key point to take from this. So, and here's the crazy thing. She's admitting the truth that we all talk about, we all know. Society hates us. Western society. And yet, she doesn't go into the real nitty gritty, because the nitty gritty in this case, in my opinion, is male privilege. Because if we are hated, okay, okay, so you got good and bad, right? You got a movie that's like, let's say 100, it's out of a 0 to 100, it's rated as 100, it's rated as a 99, and then you got 0, right? So if being hated as a group, okay, that's very important, because hated as a man, it depends on what you do. Hated as a group is kind of an inherent bias, an emotional bias. And if you know anything about emotional biases, is they don't change based on logic. Emotional biases are very deep-rooted. They're very resistant to change. Emotional biases, because they're not logical. So an emotional bias would be like a hatred of a certain ethnic group, right? And that was why it was so difficult, to get rid of in let's say in the U.S. and the South. And other countries haven't even started. They do it and they don't even admit it yet. It's like Jim Crow is still going on in a lot of countries, and people won't even start to admit it. The U.S. long ago got rid of that, and so it took time. It takes time, right, to do that. So when I read this article, it's basically Western society hates me, right? So how do I handle that? Because I think her advice after this isn't that meaningful. I think the biggest benefit of this article is just the fact that she's admitting that it's all a lie. That the whole patriarchy, the whole you're privileged, that is all a lie. That's what she's saying in this article. It's all a lie. But even this woman doesn't have the guts to use the words, right? She's just talking to men here. She's saying, oh, you guys are great. Don't worry. Just keep working. Just don't give up, right? She's not taking on the in other words, if this was an article, let's say during Jim Crow days in America, this article would be like, our society reviles African immigrants. And you guys are great. You guys are worth it. You guys are this. It's not talking about the legal, emotional majority and the kind of the depressing impossibility to change in their lifetime. Groups don't change in your lifetime. They change over a long period of time, right? Emotional biases, don't expect those to change in your lifetime. So what should you think about these type of articles? I'll quickly go through it, but as a rule, what should you think? For me, it's very, very simple. I'm grateful when I see this, because I say, you know what? Finally, someone's saying the truth. And I'm putting the truth into patriarchy is not true. We don't have a patriarchy. In fact, And the easiest way to see it is that men are hated. Okay, that's the opposite. So if there's 100 for love and 100 for hate, patriarchy would be on the other side, right? It doesn't make sense. It's like saying, it's very cool in here, but the building's on fire. You know what I mean? Or it's hot, standing on, laying on ice. It doesn't make sense. It's not a graded argument. It's impossible, right? So she's basically saying that everything that backs up the arguments that create the emotional hatred of men is false. But she's not going into it. If you want to change things, right, you don't tell people that are hated that they're good. The way you help people, so for example, it's kind of like there's a crime going on, okay? And criminals are, let's say, beating up people, shooting people. You don't go into that group while it's happening, right? That's kind of what she's doing. Everybody's getting shot and killed and, beaten up and threatened. And then you come in and you talk to the people on the ground and you say, it's okay. You really didn't do anything wrong. You're a good person. And then meanwhile, the group is threatening, destroying everybody in the room. And it's going on, right? You're going to the people they're getting threatened and you're just kind of quietly saying, you're a good person. Don't, you deserve this. You don't deserve to get shot in the face because you went to, the convenience store, It's like, yeah, right. Of course I didn't deserve that. I just went into the store, right? But what's really happening, right? What is the real take? The real take is that there is no hope in an article like this. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't feel good. Okay, I'm not saying you should be depressed. People misunderstand what I'm saying. I like to see an article like this in the sense that it's good to see a woman saying the truth. Society hates men. That's it. It destroys all the arguments. And emotionally, it feels good when you hear the truth, right? Because it's very painful to be hated for no reason. Emotionally hated, in a sense, in a group sense. It's one thing as a person when you did something wrong. And that's actually, as it's easier because you're responsible, right? So, for example, if you screwed somebody over and they hate you, it doesn't bother you as bad because you deserved it and you can change. But when people hate you and you didn't, and all you did was good things, right? You tried to help, you were working hard, then it's really painful actually because it's confusing, right? It's very, very difficult to deal with. So when someone says, hey, you're okay, you're good, I appreciate that. But I want to show you how far we are away from real solutions here, right? Is that she's not attacking the women's groups that are creating the dogma that is making this hatred happen. This hatred is created. Okay, it is very much fomented, okay, by education and by information and by speeches. And today it's subsidized by the government. It infiltrates every company, every group, every school, and people, including men, are being taught men are toxic, men are bad. Okay, we know that, right? We know that. But that part is good to hear again because it's not just that society hates women. It's that the government is paying for it. Okay, and it's being taught to children. So what do I take from that? What I take from that is the fact that it won't change. Okay, that's very, very important. If you realize that it will not change in your lifetime. I think the one of the things I think it's important to get out of these articles is how I should think about it, right? So what I would say here is you need to realize that this will never change in your lifetime. So basically, society hates you. It's an emotional, irrational hatred, not based on anything you particularly did as an individual. And it's very resistant to change. And children are still being taught this today. Okay? Well, that's pretty bad, right? So what should you do? The smart thing to do, okay, is don't read this and feel like there's hope. You need to look at this and say, like, this picture here is the wrong picture. They're taking children from men. This guy has his kids. He's an actor. You know what I mean? This picture was paid, right? That's not reality. Reality is that family courts are taking children from men and also lying about men, allowing false allegations. There's no perjury in family court, and they're being lied about. Lawyers are recommending to lie. Children are being raised without their father. Their fathers are being lied about as if they didn't want to be there. And that creates a hatred that will never end, right? In our lifetime. I hope you can start to see the inability for this to change in your lifetime. Like an article, one judge, one famous person. That doesn't stop something like this. This is a machine. We're in a machine state here of hatred against men. And so basically, let me go through a couple details here. Yeah, we're being called, we are toxic, violent, insensitive, privileged, crude, and useless. Okay, useless is the one that's the most painful for men. Useless is a really tough one. Crude, we don't mind. Privilege is, she's already proving it's not true. Insensitive is absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. And violent, women are violent, men are violent. Any psychologist worth their weight will tell you that there's different ways to be violent. And a lot of the ways that women are violent are not recognized as violent. Right? We only see violent in a physical sense. We don't see it in setting somebody up to go to jail. We don't see that as violence. But that's even worse, right? That's like if you bring a bunch of people to beat somebody up. You weren't violent, but they were. You paid them to do it, or you talked them into it. That's the way women use it, the legal system. So women definitely are violent against men. And toxic, there's no definition of that, right? Let's see here. We have to arrest. This is a Jane Fonda, a famous celebrity who always gets red carpet. And she said recently, we have to arrest and jail those men, basically men. There would be no climate crisis if there was no patriarchy. So she's now not only doubling down on the lies against men, but she's bringing it up to a whole new level, because now she's basically saying this: if the climate, if the globe warms, right, and we start to live in dire circumstances, we should direct our anger at the cause, which is men, right? So this is the type of argument that we're fighting against. This is why I don't live in the West, is because I think a lot of guys that are not that smart, they don't realize really how hopeless it is. They think, enough of these articles and people will change. We won the Bud Light thing, so, we're going to win this one. That ain't what is happening here. I don't see that. I don't see that. I see them ramping it up to more and more bigger issues and kind of setting up, like, in a sense, a kind of a total disintegration or destruction of men, right? The foundations of that. I really don't, need to see loads of useless white male pilots Okay. Negative messaging is everywhere. It's in vogue. And then she goes into an argument that feels very good for men. It's like, we wouldn't have the society. They wouldn't be able to comfortably protest and everything. But I don't think that's important. I really don't think that's not important for men. She's just talking, I think she's talking honestly to women. She's a little bit worried that men are going to get tired of this and not going to help women anymore. Not going to marry them, go overseas. I think it's more, that part of the article is more like a self-protection, right? But what is the advice that men should do? Here she's just going through like the fact that basically what she's saying here is that feminism created this hatred, right? Because we didn't always trash men. And she's talking about how she doesn't say it, because again, she's not saying it. She's not directing her arguments at the cause. She's directing her kind of attaboys at the victims, right? And it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like going into a crime scene and saying, hey, you don't deserve to get shot, and then they get killed. And then you go to the next guy, you don't deserve to get beaten, and the guy gets beaten. You don't deserve that. It's like, it's nice to hear that before, a moment before you die. That's nice, but doesn't change it, right? You would have been better to not have been there, right? Like in the end, when you get shot in the head, you don't care how much somebody else cares. You just think, if you could come back from the, if there was an afterlife, you'd be like, I wish I would have taken that threat seriously, is what you would think. I wish I would have not gone to that store. I wish I would have paid attention to the growing violence in that area, right? I wish I would have made different decisions. It's nice that people care that you got shot in the head, but really, how much does it matter? Like a soldier who dies in a battle, it's nice that people come to your grave. It's nice that people think of you a certain way. But, you're given it all. You're given everything. And I think in the old days, there was a reason to give. There was a Western society. There was a culture that was leading society forward. You were doing it for your children, essentially, for a better life for them. But I would say today, even life expectancies are going down. But I think also, even just enjoyment of life was much better in the 70s. So it's getting worse, right? So should you sacrifice yourself in the same way that you would have, sacrificed before? Because before, just the fundamental idea is that life is going to get better. So if you sacrifice yourself, which is obviously the ultimate that you can do as a human, is that there will be a benefit to your children, right? But I think today, if you sacrifice for Western society, what you're really doing is you're supporting the machine that is going to destroy the children of the future. And that's the reality. That is the truth about this article, is that nothing has changed. Even the best women are not addressing not only the cause of this emotional, illogical, destructive hatred of men, which is causing suicide rates to go through the roof for men. This is the cause. This is the cause right here. If anybody wants to know, everybody's like, we don't really know why male suicide's so high. And I wonder, this is the cause, okay? If you're going to hang your hat on something, being disrespected, hated, called useless, being hated as a group with no chance of redemption. That's the problem with emotional hatred, is that there's no path for changing. So for example, if I say you're lazy at work, okay, you can start working hard. And I could try to like sabotage that. Like you go sweep the floor and I throw some dirt there. I could try to sabotage you for a while, but eventually I would get caught. A camera, somebody would see me, and then everything would turn around and you'd be like, you're like the hardest working guy, you're awesome. And that bonehead who tried to screw you over, we fired him. It would eventually get caught. And you would be able to work your way out of it. So in other words, you might be lazy, right? And then someone calls you lazy and say, wait, I don't want to be lazy. I'm not going to do this. And then you start working hard. And then society says, you're working at one company with one boss. He sees that you're working hard and he changes his opinion about you. Done. He's the guy who pays you. That's very meaningful. The problem with being hated by children and women, and this being in the education and in the government, in the media, is that these are things that are large scale. These are overall. So you're not being called something by somebody that has any chance of changing anything. There's no boss. And there's no redemption. There's no redemption. This is what you need to understand as a man. There's nothing you can do to change how people look at you once they've been indoctrinated into a set of ideologies. Because even if you meet a woman, right, and you treat her very well and she's indoctrinated against men, and you do everything for her, you sacrifice for her, you have a daughter, you do everything for her, there's still a good chance that when all is said and done, you'll never be appreciated. Even just because, again, it's emotional. It's illogical. Hatred is illogical. Men can do it, women can do it. This is not about men and women. It's just like, it's fomenting a hatred of a group. So it's likely that even in an individual circumstance, you wouldn't change their minds. It's kind of like if you've ever tried to change a Democrat's mind or a Republican's mind, or whatever country you're in, like a conservative person into a liberal or a liberal into a conservative. Have you ever done that? Like you're having a dinner with somebody and then you tell them, hey, you're wrong about all these things. It's exactly opposite. And the guy's like, God damn, you're right. I'm going to change everything I'm doing. I'll change my friends. I'm changing the articles I'm reading. I'm going to change different books. And I got to make up for it because I was wrong all these years. How many times, I know we all dream of this, but when was the last time anybody in your life actually who is in an ideology totally listened to you and changed their life? Like when was the last time? Who was the person? And did they stick to it? It's like, no. People, you have an argument, you have a discussion. Like my friends that are liberal, they're liberal. My friends that are conservative, they're conservative. And people do change, but what they usually do, here's what young guys don't understand. Whenever you see somebody changing, always assume that human nature prevails. What I mean by that is usually, like say somebody born in New York, raised in New York, they tend to be liberal, okay? So they might be conservative for years, but as they get older, they're going to tend to go back to their roots. So it's not logical, it's going back to what's comfortable, the way they were raised, the people they were around, the way they thought. That's very normal. So people do change in a sense that in the working years of their life, sometimes they'll start to see things differently. But as they get older, it's like, what I'm saying is it's really hard to change people, like for real and for good. Just because we are emotional creatures, right? And I think when you understand how incredibly difficult it is even to change yourself, you'll stop trying to change other people, just because it doesn't work, right? So the best thing you can do for yourself is accept the reality, accept the utter, low pride, like the lack of likeliness that anything will change in your lifetime. Okay? Now that sounds pretty bad. No. No. This is why you're listening to Ronin Man, because it's everybody. The reason why people are depressed, okay, and I'm not depressed, is because they put their faith in things that won't work. And it makes them feel good in the moment. But then in the long term, they get depressed because they realize that it didn't change, right? Because they're not trying to change themselves. They're hoping that a large group of people, millions of people, in this case, hundreds of millions of people, will change. But they don't have any ability to change those people. We only have ability to change ourselves. So they're hoping that hundreds of millions or even billions of other people will change. And they're also hoping that a kind of a hard-fought, resistant legal system, once something, once the Jim Crow laws were in order, in place, right, and society saw that as normal, it was really difficult to change. And even many years after the Jim Crow laws were taken down, there was people who still thought the same way later. And that should teach you something, right? What that teaches you is that these type of things, they just don't change. So what can you do? How can you have a good life? And this is what that book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. You really, once in a while, just got to go back and read that book. That book is the foundation of letting society be. And what I'm saying is even more than what he's saying, because he's saying let it be. I'm saying that it's not going to change. Not just that he's saying you can leave it, you can go be free anyway, right? And what I'm saying is 100% what he's saying. He was my guiding light to this way of thinking. But I'm saying it's even worse than that. You need to know that it will not change, okay? Western society hates men. Children are being taught to hate men. Movies indoctrinate people to hate men. Young children are being taught. The media is controlled by this narrative. The government funds groups that teach the hatred of men. The system is there. Not only is there a lot of hateful people, but the system is teaching it and funding it. And it's going younger and younger. So, that's pretty hard, right? What do I do? What do I do? Here's where you just for a second, just think of a beautiful beach in Tahiti. All right, just think of it. The water just kind of lapping up. Right? Now imagine you're laying down in a desert, in the middle of a desert, like Death Valley or Gobi Desert, Sahara. And you're looking up, laying down in the sand and looking up at the stars. And just feeling the wonder of the world. Maybe a couple friends with you, riding camels out there. Feel it. And you're out on a boat in the middle of the ocean, right? The feeling, the excitement. It's like the world is there. There's two worlds. There's the world of people and there's the world of nature. Now, people are part of nature, and that's also interesting. But the world is where we live, right? The world. And the world hasn't changed. The world is fucking wonderful. I mean, it is just a beautiful place. And the longer you waste fighting an unwinnable battle and sitting in kind of a loser place where it's not nurturing you. I was just talking last night to one of the guys who was at the mini summit, and he was saying his hometown just sucks. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing to do. And he was just I love Bangkok. I just love it. I love the excitement. I love the people. I love the malls. And he lives here. He's not visiting. And he was just going on, and I was just thinking, yeah, sometimes just your city can suck so bad. Some cities just fucking suck. But you don't really realize it till you travel. And then you realize you have options. So the hatred of you, okay? Because see, here's the thing. In the end, you know that song Brandy? That I'll put it down in the bottom. I'll put the song Brandy. And Brandy, the words to that is the guy, you know, basically he meets the girl, right? And then he says, you know, basically you're great and everything, but my love is the sea, right? And he leaves her and she always loves him, right? That is really what men are. We are adventurers. We are explorers. And that's no hand job bullshit. That's what we do. Men go to the bottom of the ocean. They go up to space. They look into electrons, microscopes. They discover the smallest thing. They're working on time travel. Men are the discoverers and explorers. And that is in you, right? Society, or all these legal restrictions. You can't park here for 5 minutes, and you need to know how to talk to a police officer. He can put you in jail. All this control, all this lack of freedom, all this worry, all these limitations, right? Basically, men built society, right? That's true. That girl's telling the truth. Jenny's telling the truth. But the thing is, why did we build it? We built it for women. We really, really, for us, for men, exploring is the shit. I'm telling you, the guys, we just had the mini summit here in Bangkok, and you should see the guys' faces. I mean, fucking dudes were fired up to be here. Fox, who was at the last summit, he's flying over in a few days. He had never been to Asia. And he's just like, Asia's a place for me. Travel, adventure, right? Adventure, And the guys coming to Japan, this is going to be the best adventure we've ever done as a group. I'm going to do everything to make this one good. We're going to have so much fun, man. I cannot fucking wait. And that's it, man. That's what men like. Men don't care. Maybe you were brainwashed as a kid to think you care. You might have grown up in a big city and you think, oh, I really care about my watch, and I care about my car, and I care about this fabric and everything. Dude, let me take you on an adventure. Let me just take you on an adventure. A wild, crazy adventure where you might get injured. You might get bitten by bugs. You might get lost. You might sweat your ass off. You might have a bad day here and there. You might feel like you're going to drown when a big wave fucking just hammers you during the typhoon. But you know what? When you come out of it, you're going to be like, fucking adventure, man. Fuck yeah. So I say this as a closing. Thank society for not making you welcome in the society you built. Because in the end, you did build it as men. We did. Okay. But we didn't build it for ourselves. And we don't even fucking need it. Don't support it anymore. We built it and they turned it against us. Fine. Ungrateful fucks, no doubt about it. That's true. Selfish, ungrateful, illogical, inhumane, cruel, absolutely. To take a machine that was built by somebody and use it against them, that's terrible. But that's their karma. That's what they have to live with. For us, right? What do men do? I know what I do. If I build something for somebody, right? And they use it against me, what do I do? What do I do? I fucking walk away. Because I'm like, hey, I got the skills to build shit, man. No one else, look what we built. It's amazing what we built. And how do we build it? We built it because, there's many reasons, but one of them is that sense of optimism and adventure. We pushed every single boundary. Like if you just look at the U.S. kind of ethos in the 1800s of exploring and expanding. Now, of course, you could say land is taken, but land is always taken. It happens in every society. Japan, they had indigenous people. They were basically Russians. They were taken over as the Chinese came. Every country had a certain type of people, a certain type of plant. Another plant comes in, takes over. Happens all the time. Every garden, every people. The Kenya, different tribes, they fight, they beat the other tribes, they take over. This is what happens. This is actually how nature works, right? And so don't look at that side. What I'm asking you, we look at that side enough. What I'm telling you is that spirit that they had, that spirit of I can do it. There's more out there. And unknown shit. And I'm going to make the best decisions. I don't want to go in the worst places, but I'm going to go and I'm going to discover what is out there just because I'm a man. Just because that's what gives me fucking wood. I love it. Sleeping with different women, seeing different places, learning different things, becoming like a man who can take care of himself, can go anywhere, and then take all the learnings, and you become much more wise, much more knowledgeable, much more capable than a man who sits in one place. A much more well-rounded, right? So just wipe your hands right now and say, Western society, we built you, that's good. And you turned against us, okay, fine, right? No problem, right? That's your karma, right? But of course, I don't want to put fuel into the machine attacking me. Like if somebody's trying to, let's say someone has a gun to my head, I don't hand them, just imagine what we're doing right now is you're on the ground, there's a guy with a gun to your head, and we're like, oh, just a second. You're probably low on energy, and you're handing him like a protein bar or a Snickers bar, and you say, hey, eat this before you shoot me. You'll have more energy, and you won't be so tired, and you'll be more optimistic. Don't... You need energy while you're shooting me. Like, don't get all down. Like, here's a protein bar, and there's some fruit, It's like, no. Walk away from the machine, because you can walk away. Get a passport. And emotionally walk away. You might be earning money in the West, but you emotionally, psychologically, there's no connection anymore. You don't owe anything. You built the place. It turned against you, fine. Don't go down the road of just rehashing it in your mind and, oh, I'm going to get so angry. Like, no. Again, that's another trap. And that's a trap they love, because that puts you in a state of anger, which puts you in, then they catch you. See, look at him. He's angry. See, that's because blah, 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 blah. It's like, no. You're just like, hey, fine. You don't even explain it to them. But you're like, oh, we built this beautiful place and ungrateful fucks turned against us. It's like a father with ungrateful sons. At some point, you just say, you know what? I did my best. You know what I mean? And you go out, get yourself a new girl, get yourself a new car, get yourself a new life, and you live your life. And you enjoy your life. It's not the life you chose. You gave it all for another purpose, but you can't control other people. And at the same time, you don't know, maybe later they'll change. Maybe in 100 years or 500 years or 1,200 years, society will appreciate men's, contributions. And things will probably change. But it will, I'm guessing it'll be, something like hundreds of years. So and I get some solace from that too. Because I know that eventually, at some point, just like the witch hunt of, where was that? Near Boston, right? That kind of like of the 1700s, that witch hunt, that eventually worked itself out. But not in their lifetime. right? But if you look at it now, we know that's just total bullshit, right? Witches are out floating around, and we now know the foolishness of those people. But keep in mind, it wasn't those people. It made no difference to them in their life. But there is some solace that now it's seen as, like those people that did it. If we can go back in time, those people doing it would be utterly, you know what I mean? Like, they'd be in prison or fools, right? Because they're wrong, right? And society is wrong, and someday they will see that, right? Someday, but not in our lifetime. So in our lifetime, what do I recommend? Wipe your hands. Emotionally, wipe your hands of helping Western society. Wipe your hands of giving your life for Western society. Again, don't give a candy bar to the guy shooting you in the head, right? You and your girlfriend in the head. Like, don't just say, "Oh, here's a candy bar," before you shoot her in the head. That's good. Get some energy, and then you'll have energy to shoot me too, and the rest of my family. No, don't go in, and just go enjoy. There's a beautiful world out there. There's a beautiful world, and you might even find, like me, having done this for so many decades, is that my life ends up being like way fucking better and way more enjoyable. So it wasn't just getting away. It was like a life of adventure, which is fucking exactly what I want. And that's what I want to keep on doing. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys had a great Father's Day for fathers and for future fathers. All right. Take it easy.